YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy David from NBA Knowledge, and today we are going to talk about the worst referee calls in NBA history. Without further ado, make sure you drop a like, comment your opinions, hit that subscribe button, and the bell to be notified. Now let's talk about some terrible ass refs. The first ref that we're going to talk about is Joey Crawford. You're probably going to see him on this list a whole bunch of times. This guy is easily the worst referee in NBA history. Some of the calls that he has made have been so egregious that it blows my mind that he was hired and still employed by the NBA for such a long period of time. The first call that we have here is the call that he made against the Pistons on Chauncey Billups, and he called a foul on him after bumping Damon Jones on a fast break. This is easily, arguably the worst call in NBA history from the perspective that you obviously bumped him, so why are you calling a foul on the other guy? You could just reset the whole play. It's a mistake. It happens. But because I guess his pride, or he just didn't want to accept it, which I guess goes hand in hand, he just decides to call a foul on the opposing player. Like, honestly, I don't know why he wasn't fired after this, and for all I know, he probably was, but honestly, easily, and I mean easily, the worst call I have ever seen live. Just a terrible, terrible call, but we will see more of Joey Crawford on this list, so stay tuned. So Rasheed Wallace easily has the funniest ejection I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, for those who don't know, Rasheed Wallace is a very brash individual. Ball don't lie. That guy has really popularized that statement. And if I'm being honest here, seeing this ejection on face is just so funny. I'm sorry, it's wrong that he got ejected, but a lot of people don't even remember that he already had a technical foul earlier on in the game, but it does not excuse ejecting somebody just because they stared at you. And to that ref, apparently he's trying to intimidate him. I'm sorry, if you feel intimidated because an NBA player is just staring at you, then that just exposes the insecurities that you have as a person, because he's just looking at you. If he tries to attack you after the game or something, you know what you do? You lawyer the fuck up. It's not that big of a deal, bro. Don't just eject him out of the game. It just really blows my mind, the egos on these referees. But trust me, it gets worse, especially with our last selection. The next foul that we have here is the Steve Nash foul with Marcus Camby. Honestly, this foul makes no sense at all. Like, really makes no sense. And of course, who is it? Joey Crawford. Joey Crawford called a foul on Marcus Camby, who was on the opposing team of the Portland Trail Blazers. But the real question is, I'm going to show you this in a second. How was there a foul when Steve Nash and Marcus Camby were nowhere near each other on the play? I kid you not, just a really puzzling call. And honestly, hey, maybe Marcus Camby has powers and he transported and used his ghost to foul Steve Nash, and Steve Nash just didn't even notice, and nobody in the arena saw it but Joey Crawford, because he has superpowers himself. I mean, with all the calls he's given, maybe he's seeing things that we just can't see. The next foul that we have here, honestly, in itself is not that big of a deal, but considering the fact that so many people say that this finals was rigged or the calls were ridiculous for D Wade, that's why I have it on this list. And yes, you guessed it, it is the foul on Dirk at the ending of Game 6. Dirk had a really solid game, at least in the box score of 29 points and 15 rebounds, but at the end of the game, his defense cost them that series, or at least that moment to win the game. Because being down by one, D Wade was driving on the left side of the baseline and then kind of gave Dirk this elbow. Now, if I'm being honest, a lot of people do question this call, and that's why it's on this list, but in my opinion, that was not the greatest defense from Dirk Nowitzki. And the reason I really wanted to put this here is because I don't think a lot of people understand that the Mavericks were fouling D Wade a lot. D Wade is just great at drawing contact, but it's all up to you guys. If you think that it's a foul, let me know in the comment section. But if we're being honest, in my personal opinion, I don't really see the foul on that play. I just see a bad case of defense, but it is something I probably would have let go, especially considering that D Wade is the one that gave him the elbow to the chest. But moving on to the next call that we have here Of course, we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's foul in the NBA Finals against the Detroit Pistons. This was one of the worst calls in all of sports, especially considering that it decided the NBA championship. I kid you not, guys. The Pistons came into this game up 3-2 in a best-of-7 series, and they had a lead of 102-101, and they led the Lakers with 27 seconds left in the game. And of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar goes to the line. He was defended by Bill Laimbeer, who at the time had 5 fouls. Kareem launched his hook shot that clanked off the rim, but it was bailed out by a foul call on Bill Laimbeer. Whether you think this is a foul or not, honestly isn't even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that they missed a travel from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar before he even got supposedly fouled in the first place. It blows my mind that nobody talks about that. Like, literally, everyone debates the fact on if it should have been a foul or not, but nobody brings up the fact that it never should have been called because Kareem traveled before that play even took place. It is ridiculous, and honestly, it's one of the most overlooked things in NBA history. But moving on to the next spot, we have the Kings versus Lakers, the entire series. This series goes down as one of the most weirdly officiated series on the Sacramento Kings in NBA history. This series made no sense. There were calls that were so blown out of proportion, especially in Game 6. And if I could highlight it, it would probably be that game in particular. A lot of people say it was quote unquote rigged for the favor of the Los Angeles Lakers. And I gotta be honest, I'm not gonna go that far, but there are definitely some questionable calls. But similar to the Mavericks series versus the Heat, there were some calls that I gotta look at and say, yeah, I understand why that was a foul, especially in the case of Chris Webber. I love Chris Webber. That's one of my favorite players of all time, one of the most underrated players in NBA history, and should be in the Hall of Fame. But let's call a spade a spade. He did commit some questionable calls, especially down the stretch of Game 6. But I cannot take away the facts, and the facts are, when you go back and watch that series, so many calls were left unmade for the case of the Kings, and so many calls should not have been called in the case of the Lakers. It really blows my mind how the refs just swapped up once the Lakers went down in that series, but I guess all's fair in love and war. But moving on to the next and final entry on this list, we have the Tim Duncan laugh. Yes, easily the worst call I have ever seen in my entire life. And who made this call? The one and only Joey Crawford. This guy should be in the Hall of Fame of the worst things in NBA history. This guy is an abomination to the referee position, and he is one of the biggest reasons why players do not respect referees. Think about this. This guy gave a technical foul to Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan, who is one of the nicest people in NBA history and one of the quietest people in NBA history. If I'm not mistaken, this is his only ejection throughout his entire career. He gave him a technical for laughing at him on the bench, right? And then he gave him another technical for laughing at him again. And if you know basketball and you know math, 2 technicals means you're out of the game. So he ejected Tim Duncan when he wasn't even playing. He was on the bench and he was laughing. Now, honestly, I don't know the repercussions, because there had to have been some repercussions for Joey Crawford after this. But this, I hope, was his last game officiating, because it made me mad just watching that clip and watching that Tim Duncan actually had to leave the game because of some ref having an ego that needed to be stroked, and he couldn't handle somebody just laughing. It's ridiculous. It really blows my mind, the egos of some of these referees. I mean, honestly, but at the end of the day, shout out to Tim Duncan, top 5 player in NBA history. Don't worry, this game was minuscule. It doesn't really hurt your legacy. You're a champion, Finals MVP 3 times over, back-to-back MVP. You do what you gotta do. Hope you're enjoying retirement, Timmy D. But that concludes this video. Make sure you guys drop a like down below, hit that subscribe button and that bell to be notified. Y'all stay safe and wash your hands. It's your boy David from NBA Knowledge. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.